Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back and welcome to another Victrix Pillage Warband review. You guys getting tired of these reviews yet? No, me neither. This time it's going to be for their Vikings, and as with all these Warband sets, I should say that they are sponsored by Victrix because they were kind enough to send this to us for review purposes. So as ever, huge heartfelt thanks to Victrix for their ongoing support for the channel, for sending these to us to review together, because I'm really eager to get this information out to the community as quickly as I can. So if you've been following this series, you'll know I have some disclaimers at the beginning of each of these videos. The first is that this is part 3 of what will be 5-part series. I'm going to review each of the Warband sets on their own. So we did the Saxons first, the Rus second, the Vikings here, of course. The Normans will be 4th, and I'm going to have a 5th final video in which I'm going to do all the kit bashing that I've been, frankly, eager to do. But I didn't want any one set to be missing out on bits from another, so I wanted to wait until I had everything opened up, and then I can do all the bit swapping and converting that I want in that 5th final video. The second disclaimer is that I'm going to treat each of these reviews like my other reviews don't exist. And this is another great example of why, because I actually have reviewed both of, well, the sets that comprise this set, which are the Victrix Vikings and their Dark Age archers. So rather than sending you off on a goose chase to track down any bit information you might want on 2 separate other videos, I thought, let's just pretend those don't exist. We're going to treat this like any other review. I'll go through all the bits, all the details of these sets, so that you have all the information here in one place if you need it. So with those disclaimers out of the way, if you're unfamiliar with this Warband release, it was released in conjunction with the Pillage rule set that Victrix also just put out. And they are, as I kind of just mentioned, sort of slimmed down version of their main infantry sets that exist for the Saxons, the Normans, the Rus, and in this case the Vikings, with some other sprues added in. And in this one, compositionally, it's very similar to the Rus, by which I mean we have 1 command frame from the Viking set, 3 of the warrior frames from the Viking set, and then 1 Dark Age archer sprue added in. So again, that mirrors what we saw from a makeup standpoint from the Rus set very closely, because that one also had, I think, 2 armored sprues, 2 regular sprues, or 3 regular sprues, because there's fewer models on the regular sprues, the warrior sprues, and then 1 of the archer sprues. And so I'll expand on this toward the end of the video when I give you my final thoughts, but I do, from a makeup standpoint, in terms of the breakdown of the kit, wanted to state here out of the gates, as with that Rus set, that I think, especially comparing it to how successful the Saxon kit was, because that was comprised of what I would call 4 unique sprues, essentially from 3 different sets from Victrix. The Rus had 3 unique sprues from 2 separate sets, and this is a similar case where you've got 3 unique sprues from 2 different Victrix sets. And I guess my only critique of that is that it makes it too easy to directly compare this set to the Victrix Viking set that exists. And just to knock that comparison out of the way here at the beginning, that set is it's 2 sprues of the command, and then it is, I think it's 6 sprues of the warriors, because it's 60 models for $49 US. So what you're essentially sacrificing for $5 less, it should be noted, US, is you're giving up 1 of the command sprues, and you're giving up 3 of the warrior sprues, and you're adding in a Dark Age archer set. Now, I said in that video, I'll expand at the end again on how I think it maybe could have been improved slightly. I still see a value proposition here. For me anyway, I've mentioned in the Rus video that I don't need 60 models per kit every time I pick a kit up. I'm looking more for the variety that even a single sprue of archers can offer. And I actually think Victrix is kind of a victim of its success in this case, because part of the reason that this set might look like it's of less value is because that Viking set is, cover your ears Victrix if you're listening to this, if my rep is listening, it's too cheap. It's the truth. It's $49 US for 60 models. That's, by my math, back in napkin math over here on my left, it's 81 cents US per model for what I think are the best multiplayer plastic Vikings on the market. By contrast, Warlord Games has their Vikings out, which are probably my least favorite, and those are $40 US for 32 models, or about $1.25 per figure. So I actually think that's the sweet spot for a multi-part plastic of this caliber. Should be about $1.25 per figure, and coincidentally, this set is $44 US, like all these Warband sets for 36 models, which is about $1.22 per figure. So again, part of the reason that this set might look like it's of less value than just picking up the regular Victrix Viking set is because the Victrix Viking set, I think, is, again, cover your ears, my rep, it's probably due for a price hike, to be completely honest with you, because it's just too cheap. However, since that is not the case, since it is what it is in terms of price, we'll directly compare the two. Again, I'll expand more on those thoughts toward the end of the video. However, as it sits, I do want to go through and look at these sprues with you. So if you're not familiar with my reviews, we're going to isolate one each of these three unique sprues. I'm going to go through, give you bits breakdowns on each of those sprues. We're going to assemble the figures. Again, I'm going to save the kit bashing for my 5th video. We'll do some scale comparisons, and then I'll give you those final thoughts. So let's dive in. We're going to start with the Archer sprue, which if you watched all of these reviews so far, you'll be very familiar with. Oh, see, I almost forgot. This is the danger of trying to work too quickly here. However, if you're familiar with more recent Victrix sets, you'll be familiar with these. These are schematics that give you what I always say are recommended assembly instructions for the various sets. I don't think the Dark Age Archers ever came with this either, but I don't remember when I got that set. But I know for a fact that the Vikings did not have this when the set was initially released. I'm curious if the new packages of the Vikings, if you just picked up the Vikings on their own, if those come with this now too. But this is a more recent development for Victrix, whereas before it would be on the back of this packaging here. It would state the bits breakdowns and like which bodies could go with which arms and heads. And now you've got a visual breakdown of where all those bits can go. I said again, and I'll prove this more in the kit bashing video, but that these are really just guidelines. As long as you pay attention to arm attachment points, kind of the lengths of these various attachments, you won't have any issues at all. So now let's isolate one each of these sprues. We'll start with the Archers, which I've said now we've reviewed twice. This will be our 3rd review, so I'll try to offer any new insights that I can. And this is a great, versatile, like workhorse set as far as I'm concerned. If you were to pick up the regular Archers for yourself, I did confirm after I did my last review that that is comprised of 6 copies of the sprue, 36 models in that full set. However, here we have 1 sprue of it, 6 bodies on this frame, and I've said before, I'll say again, they're beautifully, beautifully detailed. I think I misspoke in the last review because it was early in the morning, but there are 5 unarmored bodies and then 1 armored body here. And you can see it's a good mix of attire and footgear, and they're generic enough that you could put kind of any head you want on these to make them Saxons, Normans, Vikings in this case, if you'd like. On that note, you can see here there's heads on the top and the bottom, 20 heads to these 6 bodies. As I just alluded to, you can swap in heads from those other kits without any issue because these are all their generic attachment points. But you can see from a makeup standpoint, there are 10 unarmored heads, or like headless unarmored heads. Bare heads is what I'm getting at. There are 5 that are wearing caps, and there are 5 that are armored. And you can tell I've done this enough times now because I'm not even looking at my notes anymore. So let's move around the sprue. Let's take a look at these weapons. There are 2 close combat weapons, and those are the axe that's up here, and there's 1 large, cool-looking sax knife here. 12 bows. They're in different firing and loading poses. And then a good mixture in terms of the other, like offhands. Ones that are either holding arrows, holding extra arrows, and they make really nice dynamic poses when mixed in with these bodies. It's funny, even just thinking back to, 10 years ago, when I don't think technology existed to make arrows this fine at this scale, being, somewhere between 148 and 156 scale. It's pretty cool. So 12 bow arms, and then 4 slinger arms, which are here and here, and then here and here. And then from there, you've got a number of accessories. You've got 4 quivers up here at the top, one arrow bundle. I think I remember counting 13 of these just generic accessories, some sax knives, like a hunting knife that just looks like a tomahawk, some hatchets, axes, pouches, more knives up here, more pouches. And this is actually an arm extension that goes with one of these arrow arms, and there's two of these satchels over here for your slingers, if you'd like. So as I said, a really nice, versatile set that would mix in, and does indeed mix in well with a number of sets. That's why it's included in 3 of these 4 Warband sets. So there you go. So let's move on to the command frame. So again, these next 2 frames that I'm going to show you, these 2 sprues, are both from the Viking set. In the Viking set, you would get 2 of these. In this one, you're going to get 1 of this command frame. So let's take a look at this front and back here. And yeah, it's funny, I actually just reviewed this Viking set because I got a copy of it from my buddy Young Seward in his care package that he sent me. So we did a review of these Vikings. And even still, it's really cool seeing this sprue again, because this was a really impactful set when it came out, for me anyway. So let's go through. So there's 6 bodies here in the center, and you can see there are 2 that are these 2-parters, and I think I can talk about this being like a landmark set for Victrix, and somebody had suggested I actually do like a timeline of Victrix sets, and I think I will do that at some point. But I actually also think this is the first time that Victrix ever did these 2-part bodies, which allows for some more dynamic poses on things like this Berserker guy with the overhead axe. So yeah, it's just such a cool set that way. So you can see there's one that has the mask already sculpted on. And even seeing this is interesting because Victrix has come so far since this set, as good as this one is, because we saw just on the Rust set that we just reviewed how they now have like a 2-part head that allows you to have a detached version of this, what is in this case a sculpted face mask. But you can see how, what is it, 2017 when this came out, so like 8 years ago when this came out, how they hadn't figured that piece out yet, because it's very complicated to do something like that, right? Anyway, so yeah, so you've got a couple of 2-parter bodies. All of them are armored, and then I mentioned that there's like this Berserker sculpt over here, which comes with optional fur backing. There's also furs over here that go with one of the sculpts, and there's a cape piece here that is optional for this back. You could like leave it off and make it like an elongated cowl if you like. I did that on some of my figures, and I think it looks just fine. In terms of heads, there are 10 of them scattered around the sprue. So you got 2 up here. 2 of them, 3 of them really, are clearly designed to be Berserker heads. There's these 2 here, which are to go with this body. As you can see, their attachment points are kind of strange looking. It's because they're unique to this upper torso. There's this head as well, which goes with this fur. And yeah, again, not to segment too much, but the success of these sculpts is what makes me want them to put out just a standalone Berserker set. Bare-chested in many cases, Berserkers with lots of furs. And anyway, I think that would be really, really cool. Just kind of in the style of these Berserkers. But great to have these included as they are. There are 2 heads that are what I called big boy heads in my notes, and that goes with this one here. This is also the first set, I think, in which they started playing with like body types, because not to spin it on you again, but you see how like thick this guy is compared to, say, this guy here, which is great because again, like between this sculpt here, this big guy here, they could go with either of these larger heads, which are meant to be proportionate with this body, or even this guy here as a Berserker. You can see how you can really make some cool characters out of this command frame. And then you get a couple more heads up here. Again, 10 total. I think there are 2 that are unarmored, 3 that are armored, 3 of those Berserker heads, and then 2 of the big boy heads, as I called it. In terms of weapon breakup, there are 3 Dane axes on this command sprue. And there's one up here that is the 2-parter. And this you can see has a little notch, if you've never dealt with these, that guides it in there. Makes it very easy to assemble. So 3 Dane axes here. There are 6 hand axes. And you can see even just right here that one's a left hand and one's a right hand. And that's true on the warrior sprue as well. I didn't write down what the breakup is of left or right hands, but you do have the option to have like Like even over here, you can see left and right hand. You can have a command model with an axe in each hand, which would be pretty cool. So 6 axes, you got 6 swords. Nice even distribution there. I didn't mention it, but there's also, even on this earlier of their Dark Age sets, differences in the axe head designs, which I just love. 9 scabbards, so 8 intact scabbards down at the bottom. There's one up here. That's the sword drawn already. And there are 6 shields, which you can see have slightly different sizes to them. Like that one is smaller, that one's bigger. The backs are all sculpted, which you know I like to see. And the number of command bits as well. A couple of standard bears here. A couple here. That one I guess arguably is just a spear, not a standard, but you can use it for whatever you want. Some crossbars here, if you wanted that. And there you have it. Very successful frame from a very successful kit. Great to see it included here. And then finally, let's take a look at one of these warrior frames. So in this case, you're going to get 3 of this sprue inside of this set. And the kit has it broken up on the back as, here if I just show you this real quick, where you can see 12 unarmored, 12 armored Vikings, 6 command. So the 6 command, of course, came from the sprue we just looked at. But the armored and the unarmored Vikings, if you're unacclimated with these kits, almost makes it sound like there's separate sprues for those. But they're not. They're just armored and unarmored bodies within this one frame, repeated 3 times. And you can see that here. So there are 4 that have chainmail, halberds there. There are 3 that are truly unarmored, these 3 here. And there's this one here which has padded armor on. And yeah, I mean, such dynamic poses. Again, even with this being a much earlier set than the Rus set that we just looked at, which is so successful, I think. It's just beautifully detailed. Again, the difference in pouches, the sculpting on like all the folds in the clothing, even how the chainmail, right, is different looking across just these 3 models. So just imagine like when you have different heads, different equipment options on these, you can create so many different dynamic poses out of these guys. And some of them are clearly in like leaping or attacking poses, which is very befitting for some Viking raiders. So it's such a well sculpted set. And there you go. So there's 17 heads, and on this one they're actually all located up on the top. But one thing I should have pointed out on the bodies is pay attention to these 2 that have these unique attachment points. Everything else has the normal neck, like flat neck attachment point, but these 2 bodies are unique and specific to these 5 heads, right? And I think Victrix has mostly moved away from doing that, because now again they have the technology to sculpt the back part of this chainmail like coif as part of a 2-part head attachment, so you can kind of drop it on different bodies if you'd like to. But this was their early foray into that. So there are 5 heads that are unique. Again, 17 heads total, if I didn't mention that. 5 are unique to these 2 bodies. There are 6 heads that are unarmored. I'm just going to scroll past all these heads here. 6 heads that are unarmored or wearing like a cap, cloth hat of some kind. And there are 6 that are armored. So 5 specialties, 6 armored, 6 unarmored. And all of those specialty heads are armored. This one actually has like a beard extension that can go on it if you wanted to, which is super cool. So on this sprue, remember there were 3 Dane axes on the command sprue. There are actually 5 Dane axes here, so you could arm 5 of your 8 Vikings with Dane axes, which is awesome. So there's one more 2-parter up here, another here, here, down here. And once again, pay attention to the axe head designs, how they're different. And there's one more way down here. So lots to play around with there. You've got a good number of regular axes. I think it's 9 in total, if I'm counting correctly. So again, regular hand axes. Some of them are a mix of left and right hands. You've got 7 spears of various lengths and spear tip types. And I did have a specific request to compare spear sizes, also compare weapon sizes in general in that kit bashing video. I also want to compare the bodies from these different sets. Almost just throw them on the lazy Susan and let you guys see them all next to each other. So I've got a little bit to think about there. But one thing to be aware of is that the spears in this set are smaller, or more thin, I should say, than on more recent Victrix sets. I think it was with their hoplites, if I'm not mistaken, the more recently released Greek hoplites, that they decided to start scaling up all their weapons by 20%, which I think was a great move, but it had the effect of making the more recent spears slightly thicker. Because some of these, especially on the shorter ones, almost look more like javelins. I still think that's cool. Cool to have some thrown spears on these Vikings if you want, but we'll see how like the Rus spears look on these guys in that kit bashing video if that's something you wanted to see. And there are a couple of sax knives, these up here. And then I don't think I mentioned the fact that there are 7 swords, so just a ton of weapon options across this sprue to equip these guys in a lot of different ways. So again, going back to them already having so much personality just in the sculpting, as they say. If you're then mixing up lots of weapons, head options, you can really create a lot of characters out of these guys. And then rounding out the sprue, we've got some scabbards down here at the bottom, and then a bunch of accessories. Some loose sax knives, some axes, some pouches, etc. So there you go. Once again, 3 of this sprue inside of the set for a total of 36 figures. So from here, let me assemble some of these miniatures, and we'll then throw them on the Lazy Susan and see how they scale up with different manufacturers. Alright, so I've assembled some of these figures, and I had a comment on the last video from a longtime subscriber named Ernesto Rodriguez, who correctly called me out for doing some head swaps when I've been swearing up and down I was going to save all the conversion work for that kit bashing video. Which is true. He was right to call me out, so nobody tell him that I did it again. So these next 2 figures are from the Archer sprue, and the heads are in both cases from the Vikings. Again, there's going to be much more extensive kit bashing in that final video, but this is just to show you that even using bits within the kits as they come, they mix and match, I think, beautifully. Now, we've got a couple of miniatures that are off of the unarmored sprue, or the warrior sprue I should say, because half of them are armored. And some of these will be familiar if you watched my Viking review, like of the actual Viking set. That's how recent that review was. And then a couple of miniatures off the command frame. Yeah, just fantastic stuff. And here we go, let's take them for a spin. So my normal commentary applies here, which is that all the miniatures that are primed, you can see the name of either a range or a manufacturer listed in red on the base. And the plastic miniatures are from this Warband set. Actually, I just realized that the slinger guy in the middle actually looks quite a bit like my brother. So, there you go. See, I've said in the other videos, I'll say it again here too, that Victrix from a scale standpoint is at the upper end of most of my historical manufacturers. They're in this collection, and kind of the lower end of the fantasy ranges. Like from Reaper, certainly Games Workshop, Mantic. So what's the final verdict? I think my assessment is identical to the Rus, which is that this is a good set, and I am definitely the target market for this kind of set because I don't want 60 miniatures every time I pick a set up. I'd rather have the inclusion of a single sprue of the archers, which, as I keep mentioning, you can actually make 12 archers and 4 slingers out of. So it doesn't just have to be 6 archers. And again, I'll prove that beyond any doubt in that kit bashing video I keep mentioning. So I would rather have that variety, pay a premium for that variety, and I think that price point of $44 for 36 figures really puts these Vikings where they should be. It puts them in line with the rest of the market, like Warlord. Anyway, I think this set is fine. I do think, again, my criticism of the Rus was that I wish it had the same level of variety that the Saxons, and as we'll see with the Normans, also have, which is that I really wish they had drawn from 3 sets. So you could have reduced the number of the warrior sprues, in this case, from 3 to 2, and include something else. I mentioned like even just having 1 sprue of the Rus here, right? And then you could have 1 sprue of the Vikings in the Rus, so then it becomes a ratio of You know, you have some Rus here. It's like Vikings with a little bit of Rus for the Vikings Warband, or Rus with a little bit of Vikings for the Rus Warband. I guess if I were king of the world, like if Victrix were consulting me and said, hey, Dan, what sprue do you think we should add in here? I think it would actually probably be the Germanic Warriors, which I think is technically from their Ancients range, but kind of blurs the line. Because I think you can make some really sweet, like unarmored, bare-chested Vikings out of that set by blending some of those bits together. So I think, yeah, if I were picking and choosing, I would put one sprue of Vikings in the Rus set, get rid of one warrior set, or one warrior sprue from that kit, and in this one I get rid of one of the Viking warrior sprue and add in their Germanic warriors. So anyway, as it sits, I think it's fine. And as I said, I think that if you don't have any Vikings in your collection and you're not necessarily looking for the like cheapest per model set, which would definitely be their 60 model count Vikings set, and you're looking for a little bit of variety, this is definitely the set for you. So once again, thank you to Victrix for sending this to us. We have one more review to do, and that's of their Normans, and then we'll do that big old kit patch video together, and then we'll be on to some more miniature review content. Grateful for all of you for stopping by for this one in the meantime, and until next time, happy gaming.